Hey guys, welcome. We're going to talk about the 10 pillars of drawing. Now, these are kind of the essentials, right? These are things that we want to have in our drawings, in every single one of our drawings. And now when you look back at your previous drawings, you're going to notice, hey, am I missing any one of these essential things? Now, you'll notice that some aren't absolutely critical, right? You're going to notice that others are absolutely critical. So I'm just going to walk through the 10 pillars of drawing. Cut. Okay, 5, 4, 3. Okay, guys, so if you want to follow along with me, that'd be great. And if not, you can just watch and maybe you'll follow along later. But I want you guys to memorize these 10 things. These are going to be very important in your journey as an artist. So let's go ahead and start with number 1. Number 1, first pillar of drawing, simple, it's line, right? You'll notice that some people like to say, you know, their drawings are line-based. Well, that's kind of as simple as that, right? I'm just going to write that right there. Number 2 is basically doubling up the line. So I'm going to draw 2 lines and then connecting the sides. So we got the 1 line there, 1 line here, connect the sides. If you're following along and you're thinking, oh, my line's not straight, no one can draw a perfect straight line. So get that out of your head. We're not using rulers. These are not straight lines. I'm not worried about it. So neither should you. So this is called shape. So it's, you know, one way to think about it is that it's kind of like a line container, right? We draw 2 lines and then we contain the sides. So this is a 2-dimensional flat surface. So, you know, a key word is 2D, it's flat. Okay, third, we're going to now redraw that same shape right here. So we got shape, shape, and then we're going to draw 3 parallel lines, meaning if you follow along here, I'm going to draw 1 line that goes like this, a parallel line to that right here, and then another parallel line to that right here. Now what I'm going to do is connect the bottom and the side. So connect the bottom, connect the side. This is form. So this is when you'll notice that drawings that have 3 dimensions, right? This is the key to 3 dimensions. This is form. Now, when we get into drawing spheres, it's a little, you can't draw angles on a sphere to make it 3-dimensional. We have to use shading. So when we get into light and form, I'm going to show you guys how to make your spheres really pop out. Okay, so number 4 is called structure. Structure is very important because it's basically, you know, with one form, you just have one thing. What if you want to draw a face? Well, we want to think of faces or anything else you draw as stacked forms. And that's what structure is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw 3 shapes. And follow along if you want. So 1. And I'm going to, you know, leave a little bit of a gap. So 3 shapes like so. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the sides as I did to the form. I'm going to make these 3 forms. So remember, we start with line, it becomes a shape. We're now turning them into forms. So I'm going to do the same thing by drawing a parallel here, a parallel here. The point of doing this is I want this parallel right here to kind of go and touch the top of this guy right here. I wanted that on purpose. So I'm going to do that again on this side. I'm going to draw a parallel right here, down. This parallel here is going to hit the top of this guy, as if to go behind it. This is what we're trying to do now. We're creating the illusion that these lines here are going behind these other shapes. Do the same thing here. Do the same here. So you can draw all of the parallels on all the shapes. Now I'm going to connect the sides. 1, 2, 3. So you might have something that looks like this. I'm going to readjust that so you guys can see that. And then now the bottom. So again, this is what I wanted to do. I want to lose the corner edge of this guy right here. So now it looks like this top form is behind this middle form. Same with now this middle form. I'm going to draw the line there. And then now the bottom. Okay, so this is structure. And when we get into, say, drawing faces or animals or really anything else past this point, this is the key component. We want to make sure that our drawings are solid and that these shapes ultimately have form. And then when those forms are stacked, that creates a structure of whatever it is, the structure of a face, the structure of a dog, the structure of a building, you name it. Whatever you're going to draw will have some kind of structure to it that will then have these as the precursors. Okay, so move this up a little bit more. Now we're going to get into 5, which is light. So basically, I'm just going to repeat what we did here for structure. So again, follow along if you want. So remember, that starts with shape. Draw another shape under that guy. And then draw another shape under that. Maybe that's a girl. Who knows what it is? Doesn't matter. All right. So again, parallel lines that come down. Draw yours far enough so that you're imagining this lower line here that's going to want to come across. You want this kind of overlap there. So draw your parallel lines long enough. I mean, I can go, boom, I can go really long with this guy. Oh, wait, that's the girl right there. Again, they don't have to be perfectly parallel as long as they're going from one point and you come down. 1 point, come down, 1 point, come down. So you can see I drew these two pretty long here. Now I'm going to come across, actually I'll come from the side down right here. Side down, connect, side down. You see, obviously I'm coming straight down. I just put a little line in there and connect it. And then I'm going to come across and then connect that guy. Come across, come across. Okay, so again, you can't get too good at stacking forms. I've probably done this 10,000 times at this point, and look how awful it looks. Don't worry if yours looks a little sloppy like mine. It's fine. We're just getting principles down. So remember what I said this was going to be. It's going to be light. So easiest way to shade these now. So when I talk about light, we're talking about shading. And then eventually when we get into the future part of this course called Form and Light, I'm going to talk about values. And that is all of the same way of saying the same thing. It's just light. Where is the light? That's a question we always want to ask. So imagine light, and this is a preview for what light, how to think about light. Imagine light like an eye. And when we draw eyes, I'm going to show you guys how to draw eyes. But think about light as an eye. So let's say that the light is literally here on top. That means this eye cannot see underneath here, right? It can't look over here and see this. It's only seeing what it's looking at. Again, think about how we see things. Think about the light. The light can only see really the tops, and we can't see at this point, we can't see the tops of these forms. We can see the front. Now light is particle based, so it becomes diffuse, and all these concepts I get into in the next chapter, or in the upcoming part. So what I just want you guys to do is just fill in the bottom shapes like I'm doing here. If you're using pencil, you're going to use your pencil to fill in. If you're using marker, if you're using Sharpie, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just filling in the bottom shapes, being careful not to, draw on the overlapping, right? We want to create a sense of depth, which we have by stacking our forms. Now we're creating a sense, we're pushing the sense of depth by adding light. So I'm going to do this with this guy. So we don't have to see the light in whatever scene we're painting in. The object is going to tell us where the light is. The object will tell the viewer where the light is. Now, when we're using pencil, we can use varying degrees of pressure, right? Because I'm using a Sharpie, I'm going to kind of try to fool the eye into thinking, okay, the bottom is the darkest. I'm going to leave the front part the lightest. And then the sides, the 1, 2, 3 sides, I'm going to just draw in some very thin, close together lines. Looks like, you know, bars on a window. Again, I'm creating the illusion that the bottom is the darkest, side is the second darkest, the front shapes, the ones that are facing at us, are the lightest. So that is why I am choosing to shade it in this way. So this is called hatching, this kind of shading. What we did at the bottom was more like filling in kind of shading, just solid fill in. So when we get into form and light, I'm going to show you guys how different techniques on how to shade things with pencil, with marker, and yeah. All right, so the next thing, so again, that's light. The next thing is composition. I'm going to write that here. You might, if you've never heard that word in relation to art, very important word, composition. It just basically means how something is designed within itself. Now, that sounds weird. Don't worry about it. I'm going to draw this form here. I'm going to draw it again right here. So we got the form. So if someone ever says to you, hey, draw a cube, well, you're drawing a form of a cube, right? That is what the form of a cube is something like this. If someone says, render me a sphere, you are going to render the form of a sphere. So everything has its form, right? And again, going back to what structure is, drawings are going to be combinations of forms and how we stack the structures and ultimately how we shade the structures. So composition, I'm going to show you guys a quick exercise that relates to the perspective course that's coming up. Now, how do we find the center of anything? Very, very easy. Let's say this is going to be a house, right? Or some kind of restaurant or some kind of building, and we want to put a door right in the center. Well, you can kind of guess where it is. I can kind of eyeball it. But the way to find it out very specifically is to basically cross the edges. Meaning, I'm going to draw a line from one side, like so. Draw a line to the other. And then I'm going to draw a centered right down the middle where the X meets the center. That is the center right here. So I'm just going to eyeball a little door right there. So within this is the composition of the door on the front part of, let's say this is the restaurant. So how do we, let's say we want to put signs and things and a table out there or chairs or whatever. Well, we can figure out, we can think about the spacing of things. So ultimately that's what composition is proportion and spacing. How do we space things out? Let's say I want to put a big circular sign or some kind of circular element. Well, I can just draw one in, but if I now think of breaking up the space, you know, I can break up the space by adding some vertical lines here. And you can see it's giving me proportions. In this case, there's 4 equal proportions. So let's say I just want to put, you know, a circle or half a circle. Well, then I know I can just kind of come in and put one right there. Again, this is just design as it relates to composition. These are things that we get into more and more as the course goes on. But you can see here, I can get some interesting patterns, and patterns relate to composition. See, a lot of people, they think, well, they jump right into this stuff at stage 2, right? And that's a little too early, right? We want to do all this structure and form and even light kind of in the beginning. Although we can wait for light till the end. So we can mix and match these things. The more you do these exercises, the more you exercise your brain to memorize these steps. And again, these steps don't have to go exactly in order. If you get good enough, you can start right with composition, or you can start with step, 8 or 9 or 10, which I'm going to get into in a second. So again, finding the center. If I want to find the center on this side, I put a window. Remember, I'm going to cross the edges. And then right there in the middle, I'm just going to eyeball kind of a square. Now, this is implying perspective. When we get into perspective, I'm going to show you guys how to correctly angle that window, because right now it's a little off because I just threw that guy in there. So again, with composition, we're talking about more of an aesthetic thing, and that is going to be very important to your drawings. It's going to add a pleasing look to your drawings. Again, if I wanted to add a sign, let's say I'm going to just put a sign like right up in here. You know, you can see that, well, I didn't put it in just one half. I kind of extended it over into the other part of it, just to make it a little off balance. Things don't have to be perfectly symmetrical. We don't want things, even a face is not perfectly symmetrical. Every face is kind of asymmetrical to some degree. Okay, so now, move this down a little bit. We're going to get into 7, which is basically detailing and texturing whatever it is we're drawing. So I'm just going to redraw this out, maybe a little bit smaller. Do the form. I'm just going to add the door. I'm just kind of eyeballing that. And so detail is going to be things like this, you know, lettering. Things like dirt, little nicks and things here or there. You can see here I'm just dotting in little things. The reason why this is an important part, and again, I'm just adding random shapes within the bigger shape. A lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of beginner artists want to jump right into detail right away. And I always encourage, well, get the bigger parts down first. Get the forms, get the structures down. Think about even the light, because the light will affect, you know, the signs and whatever else we have going on here. I can put in now details of a door. I can put in some kind of awning. And again, I'll get into detail later on, but you don't need to rush the detail. Get these first 6 parts down. Make your drawing solid. Make the compositions within the forms solid and interesting before you jump into detail, and your drawings are going to be a lot more successful. Again, we're looking up, and again, this is a perspective thing, meaning that if we take these lines, imaginary lines all the way back, they will meet at a point way below. So it's almost as if this shop is hovering. It's hovering above ground. So we can have a little person standing up. It's like, whoa, they're looking up. They're like, how'd that thing get up there? Well, that's up to us to figure out, right? So not to get too much into perspective now, I'm just going to add in a couple other forms underneath, as if these are giant cement blocks holding up our restaurant. Remember, adding in that shading underneath. Let's say if it's, you know, during the day we have the sunlight, the underneath part of our hovering restaurant is going to have some shadow. And then on the sides, I'm going to do our line things. And now this restaurant is like on blocks, right? And these can be cars, these can be concrete, be whatever we want it to be, right? The structure is the most important thing at this point. You know, I can put in, now we're in the detail stage, so I'm going to write detail right here. You know, detail is things like clouds, environments. You know, there could be birds in the sky. Those are details. They have nothing to do with the structure or composition, or the composition within the structures. We're going to talk about composition as a whole later on. Composition as the entire picture. That's more of an illustration technique. Now we're just concentrating on the fundamental basic building blocks. Okay, so the last 3 are not directly drawing based. And that's what I really like about these, because sometimes you feel stuck. Sometimes you're like, I don't know what to draw. I have no ideas, right? I have no ideas. And that's where we need to pause and stop drawing, and we need to write. Now, I'm not talking about writing a script. I'm just talking about ideas. ideas of what you want to draw. Let's say you want to draw, you know, a dragon. Well, write that down. Create a big list. I love drawing dragons. I like drawing elves. I'm big into fantasy. So you make a big list, and then whenever you get stuck, you refer back to that list. Let's say you ultimately want to draw a, you know, a city that's underwater, right? Combine very basic words together. Like if I have dragon here, let's say, you know, I know a lot of people love drawing clowns, or they're terrified of clowns. And then you put the words together, and now you have a vision of like, oh my God, a clown with a dragon? That's kind of freaky, but that's kind of cool, right? So you combine different words together to come up with ideas. And then next time you're stuck, you go back to your list and you're like, oh, okay, let's draw one of these things. Then we go back through the process of drawing out with line and then shape and then building it up from there. So I'm going to show you guys how to draw very specific things as the course continues, how to draw very specific things like eyes and noses and dragons and elves and whatever you want to draw, you can draw, okay? So the next thing, let's say you're done with writing. You're like, oh, I've written out a list of 10,000 things. Still don't feel like drawing. This is when you start to gather reference. I always encourage people to get a Pinterest page and just collect a bunch of images that you like. You know, your style, your drawing style is going to be dictated by your interests. So whatever you like, that's what you're going to draw. That's how I do it. That's how every artist I know does it. So get in a Pinterest page and just, you know, Google. The library of images is at our disposal. You know, we have a global community. All of the images there are, you guys know this. So we can just collect, make folders on your desktop, collect things you like. Be mindful about how you categorize things. Put animals in one folder, put characters in another, put vehicles in another folder. Be mindful of how you collect your reference. Then you're gonna, you know, look at your list and say, oh, I want to draw a clown. What does a clown look like? Well, hopefully you've collected reference, and then you can see, you can work back and forth. Go find some pictures of clowns and then pull it up, and then you're gonna have something to look at. So I'm gonna get into that later on as well, how we look at images and how we interpret images. Okay, now the last pillar is cut. Okay, now the last pillar is what you already have right here and in your heart. It's imagination. And you think, duh, I have an imagination. Or you might be thinking, I don't have an imagination. Yes, you do. Picture a purple giraffe with wings eating hot fudge sundae. You just had a vision of that in your brain. And the beauty of this is that everyone had a subtly different version of that. Meaning if everyone drew out or attempted to draw out that vision, it would all look a little different. Yes, it would all be the same thing. A giraffe with wings, purple, eating a hot fudge sundae. Big moon in the background, right? You can just add and add and add things. You know, your mind can think up anything. If I say go travel to Saturn right now, close your eyes and travel to Saturn, guess where you are right now? You're in Saturn. So imagination is key. Cut. Cut. So visualize, explore your mind, imagine the thing that you want to draw. Again, going back to the dragon idea, imagine you want to draw a dragon, right? You're going to close your eyes for a second, think of a dragon. You might think of Smaug, you might think of Game of Thrones, right? And that's fine. That's a great place to start. That is our reference point, right? Then you think, okay, well, what type of day is it? Who is with the dragon? Is there weather? Is there a mountain? Is there snow? Is the dragon friendly? Is the dragon cartoony? All of these things, we go back to number 8 and we write them down. So I hope these make sense. Again, Let me back out again, and we're now looking at the 10 pillars of drawing. And I encourage you guys to, like I said before, memorize these. Memorize these and follow along with the exercise again. Remember, repetition is the mother of all skill. You're only going to get better at drawing with repetition. Same goes with anything else. Learning a language, meeting new people, and everything in between. It's repetition that leads to skill. So, again, these are the 10 pillars of drawing. And hopefully these made sense to you guys. And if not, they will as you go along. Things get easier as you progress. So I will see you guys in the next video, where we are going to continue to implement these elements into creating the drawings that you ultimately want to create. Thanks for watching.